All right, so it's 7 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our workshop. This is me, Erik Gross. As you can see, this picture was taken a little while ago. I have a little bit more gray in here. I'm a senior level software developer. As I mentioned, I'm a military veteran. I was in the Navy a long time ago. I was a nuclear reactor operator and electronics technician, and that's actually where I discovered that I really, really like teaching, right? And then I'm the co-founder of the software developer bootcamp called the Tech Academy. So I'll be your instructor for the night, your question answerer, and all around just here to help. We do have an assistant in the class. You will see Cheska popping from time to time. She monitors the chat, it helps answer questions, takes care of people that aren't very nice, which I should stop saying that because it's been like a year since we had anyone who was a jerk. We have great people attend these classes. So, oh, you're welcome, Elizabeth. She said, thank you for your service. It's very kind. Yeah, I'm very proud to have served in the Navy. All right. So obviously everybody knows how chat works, right? I do try to watch the chat as we go through and pick up questions as they go along. But as you're going to see from this agenda, we're going to have an opportunity to catch any questions that I didn't catch during the actual workshop. We'll have a brief Q&A at the end. So there's the agenda. Brief explanation of the Tech Academy. We'll do our workshop, a little bit of Q&A. We'll talk about the boot camps that the Tech Academy offers. We have a free gift for you at the end, so stick around for that. Whole class should take about an hour or so. So very brief description of the Tech Academy and who we are. We offer software developer boot camps. Now, a quick check actually, drop into chat whether you're already familiar with what a coding boot camp is. Let me know yes or no in chat. Awesome, Jordan's done one, excellent, bunch of yeses. All right, a couple no's. All right, so I'll be very brief here. Here's the big picture. Up until about 13 years ago, 12 or 13 years ago, there were only two ways to get into the technology industry. You can go to school and get a degree, or you can be self-taught. Well, starting in 2012, 2013, a new way to break into tech came around, and they're called coding boot camps. I've found the best way to explain this, honestly, is just a trade school for computer programmers. It's like the best way to think about it. They are intensive technology training programs. They're designed to prepare people for entry-level technology positions. Typically, they last anywhere from 3 to 6 months. They focus on modern practical skills. That's what a boot camp is. And so at the Tech Academy, we've been offering really thorough, budget-friendly, flexible, well-reviewed coding boot camps for over a decade. We're around at the beginning of this industry. The programs we deliver are cost-effective. They're self-paced, which is kind of unique. They're fully online, and they're tailored for beginners. They're made for people that have no prior technology or coding knowledge, which was really hard to accomplish, but we did it, and we're very happy that we did that. They cover really in-demand skills. They're designed to fit around your personal schedule. We prepare people for technology careers by giving them a really well-rounded toolkit. Nationwide in America, the average price for boot camps is around $13,500, right, for a coding boot camp. Ours are under that national average. In fact, we have boot camps that start as low as $5,300, right? And I'd like to wrap this up by just talking about our mission statement. The mission statement of the Tech Academy is to graduate entry-level technology professionals that excel in the basics of their field and thereafter have successful careers in the tech industry and whose actions raise industry standards and surpass client expectations. A question about discounts. I'll go into more detail after the workshop on that, but we have programs for people no matter what their financial situation. I do want to let you know about another service, which is relatively new. It's been around for about 5 or 6 months or so, and I absolutely love delivering this service. It's called the Tech Academy Accelerator. This is a monthly subscription program, and it includes a couple of really cool things. Live weekly workshops with me that I'll talk about in a moment. There's also access to over 100 educational videos and over 100 self-paced online mini classes. But it's the workshops that are really a blast. These workshops are a deep dive into complex technical subjects. They are meant to help you accelerate your career, right? The workshops have live Q&A, live open chat and voice. We teach subjects suggested by the community because there's a whole community around it. All the people that are members get to know each other, and they get to have a hand in what do we teach. So that's the Tech Academy Accelerator. It's really inexpensive. It's only $9.99 a month. You can try it out for your first 7 days free. In fact, let me drop a link here into chat if you want to check out the accelerator. I'd love to see you there. Those workshops are so fun. Recently, we've been doing a series of workshops on data structures, like some of that fundamental nerdy computer science stuff. Really diving deep into like how they work and when would you use them? How do they apply to you as a technologist? So that's the accelerator. Okay. I want to give you some expectations for the class. We'll cover simple definitions for technical terms. We'll explain technology-related concepts in plain English. This particular class doesn't have any coding. We do have regular free coding classes. In fact, Cheska, if you can drop a link to our next free coding class into chat when you get a second, that would be great. Now I'm going to take a sip of water. It might take a bit to grab that. That's totally fine. Let's go ahead and jump into this, okay? So tonight's workshop is all about the game industry. How to break into it. What does that look like, right? And there's no getting away from the fact that this is an incredibly popular industry to work in. Lots of people are gamers, game enthusiasts, that sort of thing, right? Elizabeth asks about accessibility. If you mean teaching accessibility in terms of web development, and we do that. In terms of accessibility for the materials, there's a lot of stuff we've done to make it so the curriculum materials can be consumed by people with varying visual or auditory situations. So our admissions personnel can go into that. But yeah, we have a lot of accessibility features. So because the gaming industry is like huge, and a lot of people want to work in it, it's one of the toughest industries to break into, period, in the entire technology industry. Now, that said, hundreds of thousands of people work in the game industry, so you can break into it, right? What we're going to cover here, among other things, is what are the 3 primary barriers to breaking into that video game development industry. And like I said, we'll give some details, but to summarize, the 3 barriers are: 1, inadequate modern skills; 2, lack of experience; and 3, it's a very competitive environment. There's a lot of jobs available in tech. This area just happens to be one where there's a lot of competition. It's not easy to break in, into that game development field. So tonight, what we're going to cover is how do you overcome some of these barriers. And it starts with understanding the actual nature of the barrier and understanding the nature of the business. How does software development get done, right, in the game industry? What we're going to cover first is what's called a game engine. So there's thousands upon thousands of different types of video games, right? Underneath virtually all of them is a specialized piece of software, a specialized program called an engine. And the engine is a purpose-built type of program designed around gaming. So all of the tools inside this engine are all about creating very fast changing displays, creating objects on the screen that are fixed and objects that can move, defining the rules, the physical rules of how objects that are fixed and objects that are capable of movement can interact with each other, keeping track of game metadata like your score and all that kind of equipment you might have. Like, the engine is built with this specific situation in mind. That's what an engine is. Again, it's just a specialized computer program. That's all it is. Unreal Engine is one of the most popular of these types of software. In fact, most of you might have heard of that. Jordan asks, is Naughty Dog an engine? Good question. No, Naughty Dog is actually just a game development company that happens to use an engine when they make their programs. That's a good question, right? And the way you use an engine is this. You come up with the concept for a game and document it to whatever degree you document it. And then you'll take an engine and you'll start to add on to that engine the things that are unique to your game. In the engine are a lot of the fundamental tools you'll need. Things like defining backgrounds, like I said, defining the objects on the screen. But you do the work of your creative mind came up with an idea for the game, you build it inside this engine. So Unreal Engine is arguably the most used game engine. There are several game engines. There's two really popular ones, and we're going to cover both of them, but there's several game engines out there. Unreal is pretty much the most popular game engine, okay? We'll get to that question in a moment. Before, I think it was Jade that asked that. Jade asked a question. Let's grab that after we've introduced the next engine, okay? So here's some examples of games that were made with the Unreal Engine. Fortnite, Days Gone, Batman Arkham Knight, Mortal Kombat, and there are many, many, many more, including Gears of War 4, Street Fighter 5, Kingdom Hearts, BioShock Infinite, Borderlands, Mass Effect Andromeda, Tekken, Star Wars, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is awesome, Rainbow Six, Final Fantasy VII, the remake. I love Final Fantasy. These were all made on the Unreal Engine. And so you can see, those are a lot of different types of games. Some of those are massive multiplayer online RPGs. Some of them are first-person shooters. Some of them are, Japanese RPG style. Like, there's a lot of different types of games, and they're all built on top of this Unreal Engine. So it shows you that, like, that engine doesn't lock you into a certain category or type of game. Now, there's a subject we have to cover to really flesh out Unreal Engine and really kind of clarify why it's kind of challenging to break into this industry. And it starts with the subject of a computer programming language called C++. Now, in brief, probably most of you are familiar with the idea of a programming language. This is just a programming language is just a set of words, phrases, and symbols that are used to create the instructions you enter into the computer to make the computer do things. The way the Unreal Engine program is set up, if you want to customize how your video game works, you have to write the logic for the customization in a programming language. Specifically, you have to write that customization in the language called C#. So to effectively use Unreal Engine, you've got to know some C#. Now, we're going to add even more nuance into this in a moment, but this is just one of the factors in why it's a bit of a challenge to break into game development. In other words, it's not just enough to be a game designer and think up the idea or go into Unreal Engine and build some of the parts of your game. For your game to really have a lot of depth and customization, you're going to have to write some computer programs inside of the Unreal Engine, and you write those programs in the language called C++. Now, there was a good question about some differences between Unreal Engine and this next one, and we'll get to those in a moment. This is another game engine called Unity. That's all it is. It's just another game engine. The question was, are there any functional differences between Unreal and Unity at the moment? Not any real significant ones that would matter. There's a game of cat and mouse of like one-upsmanship. One engine will add in some new features and very rapidly the other one will add those in because it's a kind of a competitive area. There's monetization involved in having the game, the game engine be what's under a really successful video game. But the second, maybe it may be second place in terms of popularity, but it's not very far behind Unreal, is called the Unity game engine, right? And it's used in the exact same way. You come up with the concept for the game, you use Unity, as the core of the game and then add on customization to it that defines your look and feel, the way your game is played, the type of game, like I said, RPG, first-person shooter, puzzle, whatever, right? All of that can be done in Unity just the same way it can be done in the Unreal Engine as well, okay? Noah asks, which engine is more user-friendly to beginners? In my opinion, it's Unity. And the reason for that is because of the language that you use to add in customization. As we're going to cover in a moment, this is a good question, Noah. As we're going to cover in a moment, the language you can use to add customization to games that are built on Unity is called C#. I personally think it's a lot easier to learn C# than it is C++. And this isn't a seminar on different programming languages, so you kind of just have to take my word for that. But neither of them is unlearnable by a reasonably bright person. I just find C# a little more approachable for a beginner. Good question, Noah. Oh, this is another great question. Milwaukee asks, and if I mispronounce your name, Milwaukee, I apologize, asks, do these engines collaborate with each other when there's added new features? Or do they have to code the features on their own? They do not collaborate. They are competitors. I'm pretty sure a lot of people at one company, like Unity and Unreal, know each other, but no, they don't collaborate very much. They are, in fact, competitors. All right, so let's look at some games that were made on this Unity engine. Ori and the Blind Forest, Monument Valley 2. Monument Valley is an amazing game if you haven't played it, right? Hollow Knight, Pokemon Go, a kind of a little small indie game. It was a joke. Pokemon Go was the biggest thing literally in the world for a while. These are all built on the Unity game engine, and there are many, many more, including Hearthstone, Kerbal Space Program, Escape from Tarkov, Shadowgun Legends, right? Now, we've kind of covered these two major game engines. We need to cover another concept in the industry, which is a AAA game. Anybody got an idea of what does a AAA game mean? Drop in the chat if that term is familiar to you. I like this. Top tier, high budget studios. That's good. High budget game uses industry standards. Awesome. No, it's not an acronym. The AAA here's where it comes from. Okay. In the sports area, right? Like football, basketball, baseball, or whatever. There are different sort of leagues, different groupings of teams. And as you get into higher and higher levels of competitiveness and ability, they give rankings to those teams. There could be an A team, a AA, and a AAA. AAA is these are super competitive, highly skilled players. So it's a ranking is what this AAA means. That's where it comes from. In the video game world, a AAA game is a major video game that costs more than $100 million to develop. It's a very loose definition, but the game industry is actually a relatively new thing. It's only been about 25 years. It's been a real consistent thing. And so this loose casual term has come around of it's a AAA game. Usually that means it's a major video game from a major publisher of video games, and it costs a ton of money to develop. Just think about spending $100 million to develop a game. Raven asked, how does an indie game become AAA? Again, there's no strict definitions for this, but there really aren't. An indie game, almost by definition, isn't going to be a AAA and isn't trying to, because a major video game comes from a major publishing house. Indie is almost by definition small publishing house, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 developers, right? But they can have wild success. It also costs a lot less to produce an indie game because you don't have 1,500 or 2,000 people working on the game and you have to pay all their salaries. So an indie game wouldn't really become AAA because AAA, again, major video game that costs over $100 million to develop. Indie game, minor game, costs a lot, very little money, and can sometimes break through in the consciousness of the video game world and become extremely popular and make a ton of money. So there you go. Those are good questions. I like this. All right. Yeah. All right, good. Now, I already mentioned this, but there's a programming language called C#, right? This language, C++ was created around 30 years ago. C# was created around 25 years ago, right? And it was created by Microsoft as part of a campaign they had called Rapid Application Development. What they were trying to do is create a programming language that had a pretty easy learning curve, but was still very powerful. And they succeeded. C# has a decently easy learning curve, and it's very powerful. So how does this work how is this used in video game development? It's the same relationship that C++ has with the Unreal Engine. C# has a relationship with the Unity game engine, where, again, if you want to add in real depth of complexity to your games, you're going to have to write some custom programming inside of the Unity game engine, and those little programs you write are written in C#. So there's a question about Naughty Dog earlier. This is just some of the top video game studios in the world. This is as of about 4 or 5 months ago. Naughty Dog is a huge publisher, right? Rockstar Games, probably heard of them. You'd have to live under a rock to not have heard of Nintendo, all right? Insomniac, Valve, these are huge publishers, right? It is very hard to get hired at these top studios. It's very hard. They have a tremendous amount of money, lots of resources. They can afford to hire the absolute best and most experienced. So I'm just going to be really blunt with you. If you're brand new to tech, but you're a video game enthusiast, and you're like, I'm going to get me a job and I'm going to go to work at Nintendo or Valve, it isn't that it can't happen. It's that it's extremely competitive. Typically, to even be considered for a job there, they'll require that you spent some time working at a smaller studio. They want you familiar with the industry, have been part of a team that published a number of games, been part of like upgrades to games, new versions, that sort of thing, before the recruiters there will really pay much attention to you. Okay. I love all these questions. This is great. Noah asks, do more people get hired at AAA studios or smaller studios more often remotely or in person nowadays? You know, the entire tech industry has kind of like shifted over the last 4 years. And honestly, it is because of COVID. When COVID went down, everybody had to go remote. It just really wasn't a choice. Most technology companies, to one degree or another, recognized that they could still operate effectively, or sometimes even more effectively, with a remote distributed workforce. And so most industries have not gone back to a full in-office experience. As to whether these AAA studios have made that shift, I honestly don't know where a lot of them are at. I know Nintendo had, return to office kind of push, right? But I don't know where Valve is at on it. Just based on my, very casual knowledge of Gabe Newell, the founder, right? I have a feeling that he probably doesn't give a crap whether you're working from home or from an office, but I honestly don't know. It'll probably vary from game company to game company. That was a good question. And then Jordan asked, do you know anyone who started off as a front desk or help desk associate and were then promoted to a developer position in the gaming companies? I don't know people personally, but I can tell you that while the front desk is highly unlikely, help desk is an extremely successful route to get into technology. The game companies are no exception to that, right? Someone who can work help desk and then on the side study to become a programmer and become a competent programmer has two things that are very rare and very valuable. They've now got the technical chops to actually do software development, but they can handle difficult people. They can be calm when things get really hairy. They can help people through difficult problems. Like I was just thinking about this the other day. I was listening to a podcast, and one of the hosts made a point that he feels like everyone should spend at least a little time working in the service industry, working in a service industry job of some sort, whether it's a waiter or someone at a hotel or like whatever, right? Working in the service industry or call center, tech support, customer service rep. And I actually feel very, very strongly about the same thing. I did my time as a waiter. I've had jobs where you have to handle difficult customers, things going sideways. So it's a really good question. Obviously, Jordan, I'm talking a lot about it, right? But it's a great question. Help desk and moving into being a developer is a really effective route. You're already working in tech, and if you can handle getting educated on the side, like maybe doing night school at college or going to a boot camp, then yeah, I've seen that transition a lot. Good question. All right. So let's talk about how to break into video game development. I know I kind of like just said, hey, it's really hard. Well, it's hard at those top tier gaming studios, yeah. But video games are a big business and they need talent. They always need talent. So here's the basic sequence. Start out by learning website development. I'll explain why in a moment, but I want to cover the 3 technologies of the web. The first technology is HTML. If you're not familiar with it, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is the way you write out what's going to be on a web page. What's the content on the web page? Yes, Jordan, that's exactly right. So that's HTML. It controls the content and structure of material on a web page. Then there's a technology called CSS. It stands for Cascading Style Sheets. A style sheet is just a document that contains some rules about the appearance, the visual appearance of things on a web page. What fonts are used? What colors are used? Are there borders around images? Like anything about visual appearance, a style sheet contains those rules. And again, it's just a document. Cascading style sheets means taking those rules that you can write in one file and having them apply to an entire website, having them cascade through all of the pages of a website. So that's CSS. And then there's a language called JavaScript, which I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of. It is a programming language and is the programming language that helps you customize websites, customize their behavior, make it so users can interact with them, with the website. So these 3 technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, these are the 3 primary technologies of web development. Now, why would you want to learn web development if you're going to make games? So here's the thing. Virtually every computer program that's made today, with certain very rare exceptions, in one way or another, utilizes the technology of the web. It uses either HTML or CSS or JavaScript in some way. And sometimes it uses all 3. Okay. So even though you'll be using either Unreal Engine or Unity game engine, or maybe even another engine, right? And you'll be using C# or C++ to do some custom programming inside that engine. The fact is that most games are accessed over the internet, which means you need to know the technologies of the web. So that's where you start. You start by learning website development. Next, step 2, learn to code in C# and C++. Step 3, learn how to use the Unity game engine and the Unreal game engine. Step 4, build an online portfolio that has games in it, even if they're very simple games. Build a portfolio that shows that you know your web development tools, you know your C# or your C++, and you know how to use the game engines as demonstrated by real games that you published out on your portfolio. And then gain experience in one of 2 ways, actual like on-the-job experience. Either work at a smaller game studio or a game startup just to begin. Just get a technical role at either a smaller game studio or just a game startup just to begin, right? Or just work as a software developer for a year or 2. Not even in the gaming industry. Just get a software developer position. So to reiterate that sequence, learn website development, learn to code in C# and C++, learn how to use Unity and Unreal game engines, build an online portfolio that has games in it, and then gain some experience by either working at a smaller or a startup game studio or by working as a software developer for a year or two. That is a working pattern. It's not that likely that you'll do it much, much faster than that unless you happen to be a giant rock star. There we go. I just want to be factual about this. You can do it, though. Lots of people get hired in game development. At our boot camps, we've gotten lots of people hired into game development jobs, okay? All right. But speaking of which, we have a game developer boot camp. It is beefy. It's a 22-week game developer boot camp, and it accomplishes what we just talked about. On this boot camp, you learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, C++ and C#, the Unity and Unreal game engines. You have 4 weeks of live projects with those game engines, which means you'll have a portfolio. So you'll be able to show people, these are games that I worked on. And there's job placement training and job placement assistance. So the actual answer on how to break into game development is do our boot camp. Now, there's been a lot of questions that I missed. So I want to go back through here before we move on, because I don't like to miss questions. So one of them is, would you consider a trivia website a gaming website by chance? Absolutely. Absolutely. A trivia website is absolutely a gaming website. Here's the thing. So I'm just going to talk really frankly for a minute. Let's say you're a hiring manager in some sort of a technology department somewhere. I'm going to tell you the things that they actually care about, assuming someone has at least some technology training. What they care about are 3 things in my experience. One is this a kind person? A person that would fit in well and that I would enjoy working with on a daily basis. 2, is this person willing and eager to learn? Are they not bothered when they don't know something? They're like, oh, cool, an opportunity to learn, right? And 3, can they show me that they think like a software developer? Those are the 3 things that they care about. Personality and culture fit, willingness to learn and be wrong about things, and a demonstrated ability to think like an engineer, to think like a software developer. None of those are technical. None of those are, do they know the exact syntax on how to, go through an array in C++ and C#? Can they write out the exact command to, access the database? And look, you do have to have the fundamental technical skills. And that's what any decent training program will give you, ours included. But when it comes time to actually have that interview with that hiring manager, with that technology manager, I'm telling you, if it's a decent place to work, those are the things they care about, right? So why do I bring this up? This question was, would you consider a trivia website a gaming website by chance? Absolutely. When a hiring manager sees that you thought of, built, and deployed a working program of any sort, that's a huge feather in your cap. It is a big deal. It shows you were able to move beyond just the academic learning of the basic knowledge of software development, and you were able to build a thing. Not only were you able to build it, you put it out on the web so other people could look at it. It's huge. So yes, I consider it a gaming website, but what I also consider it most importantly is it is a powerful tool in your efforts to get hired into technology, in your efforts to get hired into the game industry. So yeah, absolutely, make it trivia. It doesn't need to be Final Fantasy 16. It doesn't, no, that's absurd. Build something that's realistic for you to build, and frankly, that you're interested in building, that you enjoy, that you're having fun with, and then build it and put it out there. That was a great question. I really like that. And then Jade makes a great point. Smaller studios can be more enjoyable working environments. You're absolutely right. It's a great point. And the other part of it is in those first 2 or 3 years, you're going to be learning a lot. You're going to make mistakes. We all do. I continue to make mistakes in technology, but it's kind of nice sometimes to have a small community of people that work at this, close-knit group that are all involved in this journey together, and each of them knows, hey, I don't know everything, but together as a group we can accomplish a lot of stuff. That's a really good point. It's a really good point. They can be really good working environments. Um, Moraki asks, are the small indie studios self-made publishers, or are they a sub-branch or department of the AAA studio? That's a really good question. You see, look, again, I just want to stress something. The game industry is actually very young as an industry. Compare it to the building industry of building homes, where we're looking at 5, 6, 7,000 years. Compare it to the masonry, working with brick, been around for thousands of years. Even compare it to the computer industry as a whole. 80 years now we've had computers, right? So the point I want to make is that the game industry, with like a stable, powerful industry, is only like 25, 30 years old tops. So there aren't a lot of hard and fast rules or historical like trends to look at in this industry. But that said, it is a good question. Most of the time, small indie studios really are self-made. Every once in a while, a large game studio will purchase a small studio and tell them, listen, we're going to give you some resources, but you stay over there and you do what you do. You're a small, nimble team. You're really powerful. And sometimes they actually do that, and they let them build really cool boutique games off to the side while the main company works on these big AAA titles. Sometimes a small studio like that gets purchased, and the big studio says, all right, never mind, we're going to scrap all your plans. We got rid of all your games you were planning, and now you just go our way or the highway, right? So again, there's different things that can happen. But in general, an indie studio is an indie studio, and a big, major game studio is that. It's a whole different beast, and they're almost worlds apart in many ways. So it's a good question. And I think Noah asks, how deep should I dive into the development's working pattern when it comes to being a good narrative designer for video games? This is a brilliant question. And to kind of clarify what he's talking about, video games really are about storytelling in many, many ways. And this role that Noah's talking about, the narrative designer, really is the storyteller. The one who can lay out what is the general story being told through the whole arc of this game, particularly if it's a game that has like 80 to 100 to 120 hours of gameplay. There's a whole story that's going to be played out. And even in these open world games, there's still some sort of like story behind it. And the narrative designer is the one who, and maybe it's a team, right, comes up with what is that narrative? What is that story? And then the development teams, they implement that with the technology of the game engine and the custom code and all that kind of stuff. So again, Noah asks, how deep should I dive into the development working pattern when it comes to being a good narrative designer for video games? And I really do love the question. My personal thought on this is pretty heavily. If you as a narrative designer have a strong understanding of how software is made, how computer programming is done, how the team dynamic with a long-term project of building a very big game, what does the actual process look like? The more you know about that, the more the collaborative back and forth work with the development team will produce really good effects, will produce really, really good games. It rarely works. You can almost like think about like different media like television shows or a movie, right? The writer writes it, but if you've studied that area of movies at all, you know that the words on the page that the screenwriter created and what actually gets produced are sometimes vastly different. I happen to care about this area a lot. I'm really into movies. One of my closest friends from high school is actually a screenwriter who wrote X-Men First Class and Thor, and did a whole bunch of Sarah Connor Chronicles and lots of movies, right? And he and I have talked about this a lot. He says the best sort of outcome you can have for the vision that the writer has being as close as possible to what is actually put on the screen is if there's a mutual, respectful collaboration that happens while the actual production of the movie is being made. And the same thing applies with these big top tier video games. Yes, there was probably one or two really creative narrative designers who came up with this is the whole idea for the game, right? The chances of the final game looking exactly like what they envisioned are almost zero. There are going to be changes. Sometimes the reasons behind those changes can be economical, like it might take way too long to implement something really cool in the story, and the people with the money behind the studio are like, we can't spend that much money. Sometimes it can be really interesting feedback that comes from the developers where they tell the narrative designer, look, I know you said to do it this way, but wouldn't it be cool if we did that? And considering that a lot of these developers are themselves very avid gamers, sometimes they have good ideas. So for all that, for those reasons and many more, if both sides of that sort of divide, the narrative designer and the development team, to the degree that each one understands how the other is doing their job, you're going to produce a better product. So, long-winded answer, Noah, but did that help? That kind of makes sense? Jade asks one that I actually don't know the answer to. What does the job of a narrative designer look like for a sandbox game? I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting, like short-lived and like, yeah, that's a good one. I actually don't have a real good answer for that. I'm gonna have to look that up, right? Ah, Jordan, I didn't know this. Jordan says they started shooting Gladiator when there was only 30 pages to the script. And one of those pages was, "Are you entertained?" That's awesome. Um, I'm so happy they're making a sequel to Gladiator. It's supposed to be coming out really soon. Raven asks, does thinking about good and bad endings count as storytelling in games? Storytelling happens to be something I'm pretty passionate about. For an engineer who works with computers all the time, you might wonder why, but one, I just love really good story. And two, I do a lot of work in marketing and I write a lot. Story is powerful in the human experience. There could be a lot of games where you just want that big giant good ending, that win at the end. There could be games where it's a more melancholy, it didn't really quite go the way you wanted, but it was a wild journey along the way, right? Good story is neither a good or a bad ending. It's a captivating one that the people enjoyed the journey. So to answer your question, Raven, does thinking about good and bad endings count as storytelling in games? Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. And one of the coolest things about it is when the game finally hits the market, the ultimate judge is, did they like the story? And if they did, doesn't matter if it was a bad ending or a good ending, they loved it. They loved what happened, right? Great question. Yeah, hence The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, spot on. Man, these are really, really good questions. I like this a lot. All right. This is one of the most involved groups we've had in a long time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I kind of mentioned this before. Jeremy said sometimes indie companies need publishers to back them. It happens. I read a phenomenal long form article the other day by the woman who ran all of the marketing for Valve Games when they were first starting, before they'd even launched a product at all. And she was actually working in marketing at Microsoft at the same time that her husband joined this tiny little two-man company called Valve. It was Gabe Newell and this lady's husband. And that's it. That's all there was. And they started working on their first game. Okay. And she talked about the utter disregard that the executives at Microsoft had for this nothing, tiny little two-person game studio called Valve. And how she was like a marketing executive at Microsoft. And she told him, hey, I'm working on this startup with my husband. Is there any conflict of interest? Is this going to be fine? Because I'm working on video game development stuff for Microsoft. But now I'm going to work on this video game thing for this tiny little startup called Valve. And they didn't care at all. They didn't care at all, right? Fascinating story, really cool long form story. In fact, I think if you look up on Google just marketing director Valve Games early years, you should be able to find that article. It's well worth your time if you're interested in video games at all. The part of that article that really resonated with me with this question, Jeremy said, sometimes indie companies need publishers to back them. There's some fascinating nuance to the story of the beginning of Valve, where they did actually take in some money from a large game publisher, and it was a horrific pain in the butt for them for years. So that there's just so much at stake when some company has a tremendous amount of assets and finds a little startup and goes, hey, we're going to help you. They're not going to help you for nothing. They're not going to help you for nothing. So just, you're absolutely right. That was a really, really good point. It's a fascinating area. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Noah, that's a subject for an entire workshop. Noah says, I'm considering building an independent dev team in Chicago, which is really, really, really cool. Okay. What qualities go into building a proper team and creating the successful foundation for an independent company? I can't answer that in 5 minutes. I could maybe start to answer that in 30 minutes, but really that actually is a longer form answer. Actually, Noah, here's my recommendation. This is going to be completely self-serving, but I'd love it if you did this. I think you should join the accelerator. I don't care if it's even for the free trial. Come to that and send me in like a detailed description of like what you're really trying to do. I think this has enough like interest to that community that we could do a whole workshop on that of an hour or longer. Because building a proper team, creating a successful foundation for an independent company, this is vital. This is really cool. We did a workshop a few months ago in the accelerator just on successful approaches to doing side gigs as a technology worker. Because I've learned a lot about that over the years, and I have a lot of friends who've done that. So I shared a lot of successful actions and things to be, to watch out for just with side work. But this is a different beast you're talking about. Building an independent dev team, putting in a foundation for an independent company. I'd love to do a full workshop on that. I'm sorry I can't give a long form answer in this. It's a great question, but it would take a lot to answer that. How many novels become games? I think there are. Yep. I'm not familiar with Codex as a platform for team management. And then this will be the last question before we have to move on. Milwaukee says, I've heard from my professor that networking is important. How'd you go about it? This also, by the way, is worthy of its own treatment in at least a much longer form answer. But I will tell you like what underlies every successful networking thing I've ever done. And it's the core of part of what we teach with the job placement training we do at the Tech Academy, Milwaukee. And here's what it is. There is no substitute for your genuine interest in another person. It's one of the most powerful things in the human experience. And so if you're meeting someone and you can, on purpose, discover what it is about that person or what they do or where they're from or any aspect of who they are that genuinely interests you and talk to them about that, good things will happen. There's a lot more I could say about that, okay? But your genuine interest in another human being is a powerful thing. It's great. Lim asks, is it possible to get into this industry without an IT degree? 1,000%. That's what this boot camp does. We have many, many, many graduates from our game developer boot camp who are working in game industry. We have people that got hired at Epic Games, and a lot of the smaller independent or smaller game studios have hired our graduates as well. So, is it the only boot camp out there? No, but it's really, really good. That's a good question. All right. So I think we've done Q&A a lot. Really, folks, thank you. These are fantastic questions all night long. I really loved it. All right, now I'm going to give you a bit more of an overview here. We mentioned a bit more of an overview here of these boot camps. We mentioned one of them. At the Tech Academy, we have 12 online boot camps. And as you can see, they cover a huge range of technology subjects. Yes, there's game development on there, but there's also artificial intelligence, computer programming, website development, cybersecurity, design, data science, mobile app development. In fact, we have more certification programs than any other coding bootcamp on earth. But it isn't just that I'd like to tell you about. It's this. It's how these programs are delivered that's often very, very different. They're self-paced. Everybody learns at a different pace, you know? Our programs are self-paced, but they're also fully instructor supported. So you can learn at the pace that makes sense for you. They're flexible. You set your own schedule and you can enroll any day, 365 days a year. The content on all the boot camps is very well-rounded. It's in depth. They're affordable, as I discussed earlier. Every program includes job placement training and job placement assistance. But most importantly, they're designed for absolute beginners. You don't have to have any technology knowledge or technology experience in order to get through our programs. You don't have to be a nerd already to get through our programs. I do make some really stupid, nerdy jokes in a lot of the curriculum videos. You're just going to have to deal with that. We consistently land on every major best coding bootcamp list. Our average review rating across all the major bootcamp review websites is 4.8 out of 5 stars. That's based on student and graduate feedback. We're very proud of that. This is what our graduates and students have to say about us. We worked really hard for that. Now, we've been talking about the game industry, but I want to just expand it a little bit just to the concept of working in tech at all. Why work in tech? Well, one thing is, in general, it has great work-life balance. There aren't that many jobs in technology where you're working more than 40 hours a week on a regular basis, which is kind of cool. Also, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of technology jobs are open to remote work, which can be a big deal for some people. It's also a very creative industry, not just in the game industry, which is a very creative thing anyway, right? Milwaukee, yes, the boot camps are available anytime. Jordan, the how long do you have job placement assistance question? I'm going to answer that in a moment, because normally there's a time limit on it, but there's a special thing we're doing. But back to this, technology really is a creative industry, and you can take a lot of personal pride in your work, right? Finally, it is a stable industry. Now, the media loves to have a field day every few years telling you about the latest development that's going to make it so computer programming is going to become obsolete. It's absolute, utter BS. I've been watching it happen since 1984. It wasn't true then. It wasn't true in 1997 when they said it. It wasn't true in 2001 when they said it. It wasn't true in 2012 when I last heard it. And it isn't true today when I'm hearing BS about artificial intelligence taking our jobs away. It's 1,000% not true. And it won't be. We're always going to need bright, talented engineers who are capable of solving problems, not just regurgitating code. And I could talk about that for a long time, but it is a stable industry with lots of jobs that pay well. And if you study and continue to learn and apply yourself, you get regular increases in pay, and you get more than most professions in America. It's actually really wild. I'll just share this. I have a lot of friends who are in the medical field, and it sounds like they make a lot of money. There might be a medical professional who makes $350,000, $400,000 a year. That's good money, right? The liability insurance alone typically can cost $130,000 a year for those folks. Just liability insurance alone to protect themselves in our highly litigious, lawsuit-happy culture. So instead of their $400, they're making, what, $275. Still not bad, but not as much as you think, right? I know a lot of engineers who make $250,000 a year. A lot of engineers. So, and we don't have to pay wild insurance rates or anything like that. We just get to work solving hard problems. And I can talk about it a lot more. I love the tech industry, obviously. Now, with everything I said, there are some barriers to doing a boot camp. I'll cover them very briefly. Money is an issue. We had a question about this earlier. Boot camp tuition can cost thousands of dollars. What we've done to try to solve that is we have multiple financing options, including a huge upfront discount and monthly payment options for people with whatever bad, kind of credit situation they have. I do want to point out, this is my opinion, completing a Tech Academy bootcamp genuinely is an investment in yourself. Yes, it takes money, but what you when you come out of it is you personally have valuable specialized skills that the industries in the world want and need and are willing to pay a lot of money for. That's an investment. There is also a barrier of time. There's a lot of material to get through. If you're going to be a well-rounded entry-level developer, you have to learn a lot in a tight period of time. Now, some boot camps try to solve this by doing their training in what are called cohorts. They'll group everybody who applied all in one group, and everybody starts on the same day. And they all move through the training at the exact same pace. I cannot tell you how much I hate that training model. It always bothered me when I went through it, and we don't do it that way. Our programs are self-paced. The other thing is that some boot camps require you to attend in person. Our programs are fully online. You choose your own study schedule. Part-time study is allowed, which means you can study concurrently to holding down a job or going to school. The final barrier is this, and this is one that I feel very passionate about. You do have to have some technical interest or ability. Now, the fact that you showed up on this class tonight on a Friday night when you could be doing anything tells me that the interest is there. The point I want to address, and this isn't going to be a problem or an issue for everyone, but if it does resonate with you, please hear me out. There may have been times when you've been studying some technology thing, a tutorial, a video, an article, and you felt like maybe you weren't smart enough, or you didn't quite have the ability to learn something that was so complex. I assure you, the problem is not you, it's the curriculum. It's the material. And the reason for it is this, and it's a mistake I've made in the past, so I understand it well. Many technology educators assume too much prior knowledge on the part of the student. And maybe without even meaning to, they make technology training materials too hard. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's what we spent over a decade cracking, is how do you break down the fundamentals of the subject so any reasonably bright person can understand it, and we don't blow wonderful people out of the technology industry, really bright people who could make it, but the material let them down. So just want to say that because there might be some among you who are like, man, maybe I'm not smart enough to do this. You're smart enough. All right. So here's the question I have for you. In fact, a couple of questions. Are you working a dead-end job, a job where there's a ceiling of how much you can make? Even when you look at senior people at your company or the industry you're in, and you go, man, they've been doing this for 10 or 15 years. They're making good money, but that's not what I want. I want more than that. Or maybe you're unemployed. Maybe it's important to you to work from home. Maybe you want more time with your loved ones. In other words, is it a time for a career change? Jordan, sorry to hear that. Is it time for a career change? And if it is, well, the Tech Academy is the solution. We are legitimately career change experts. It's what we've done for over a decade. And we did it on purpose. That orange bridge you see there symbolizes the fact that we're trying to be a route into technology for everyone. And for over a decade, we've helped people break into tech. And it works. Most Tech Academy graduates make around $30 an hour. That's $60,000 a year in their first job. That's the average, and it has been for years, very consistently. And it's a lot of people. We have well over 1,000 graduates working in tech, everywhere from small businesses to big companies. I mentioned Uber and Epic Games. We have people working there, Nike, Facebook, Disney, but thousands of different types of companies that they work at. So as a reminder, we have open enrollment. You can start anytime, right? And I encourage you to roll now. In fact, Cheska, can you drop this link in? And I want to explain something about this link. We'll go into chat in a moment. All right, now this is a big deal. When you click on that link, it's going to take you to a contact form. And after that is a bunch of steps where you can find out more about the school. But I'd like everyone to pay attention to this next thing I'm going to say, okay? I don't have the slide for it in this particular slide deck, but If you enroll in October, one, there's a massive discount if you pay up front. It goes up to 50% off if you can pay for your tuition up front. That could save you thousands of dollars. Two, you won't pay sales tax. No matter where you live, we'll pay the sales tax for you. Three, we'll send you physical copies of our 3 most valuable coding books that my co-founder, Jack Stanley, and I wrote. Our coding books, Coding Dictionary, You Are Not Stupid, the Computers and Technology Simplified book. We'll send you your own copies of those. 4, if you're in America and you need a laptop to do your training, we'll send you a refurbished laptop that you can keep. 5, we're getting really powerful here. We'll send you a copy of our Tech Academy career guide that covers how to navigate the first 3 years of your career once you break into tech. It lays out an exact blueprint for what to do for the first 6 months, the first 18 months, the first 36 months. It's hard-won knowledge that's very valuable. And I think most importantly, you will have unlimited job placement assistance. Once you graduate and you're working with the job placement division of our company, they will work with you for as long as it takes for you to get hired. Normally, I think there's a 3 or 4 month limit on that because I think it's economically, it's pretty rough. But no matter how long it takes for you, if you enroll in October, you have unlimited job placement assistance. So just want to mention that, okay? And again, all you have to do is click on that link that Cheska dropped into chat. And after that is a series of steps about the Tech Academy. Videos, article, you can book a call with the admissions staff, all that kind of thing. All right. A couple things to mention before you get to your free gift. Please sit tight. Our graduates love us. And because of that, referrals have been one of the top enrollment sources at the school for years. And so we instituted years ago a reward for referrals. It's a 5% commission payment for all enrollments that come from a referral. But it's not just for students and graduates. You can do that too. So in a moment here, we're going to give you an email to use to request your free gift. You can also put referrals in to that same email. We keep track of all of that. And if that person interviews with our admissions personnel and ends up enrolling at the school, we will send you a 5% check of their tuition, just as a reward for referring them. I mentioned books. The Tech Academy has 7 publications, including 3 Learn Coding Basics in Hours books, a coding book for kids and young adults, the Technology Basics Dictionary, the Project Management Handbook, and You Are Not Stupid, Computers and Technology Simplified, which is a book everyone should read. So here's our free gift. It is your own copy of the Project Management Handbook. This is a very valuable book. Project management in software is just as important as how to write code, because no one writes a program all by themselves. It's a team effort. How do you manage that team? What's the balance between the needs of the executives and leaders of the company and the economic pressures and the needs of the technology team? How do you balance all that? How do you run it all? We lay all of that out in this Project Management Handbook, that and a lot more. So if you're in America, sorry for our overseas folks, okay? But if you're in America, we can send you your own physical copy. All you do is grab the email address. Cheska, can you drop that into chat if you haven't already? Oh, there it is. Good. Grab that books@learncodinganywhere.com email address and fire off an email and says, hey, I was in Erik's class. He said I could get this free project management book. Can you please send me one? Most importantly, you have to include a full mailing address so we can actually send it to you, okay? Oh, Milwaukee has a great question. Is the boot camp grade-based or until we're able to understand the curriculum? It's until we're able to understand the curriculum. That's one of the most intelligent questions I've had in a long time. I could talk for hours about educational philosophy, but no, grades are junk. Grades are stupid. What matters is, do you understand the material and can you apply it to get the desired result? I don't care about A, B, C, or F, or D, or whatever, okay? I don't, like, whatever. Did you understand the material? And when you go to write code, does it work the way it's supposed to? So yes, that's how our school operates. It is an outcome-based program, not a time-served program. That's great. Jade asks, can those of us outside of the US get this as an ebook, please? We don't have an easy way to send it as an ebook, but I will tell you, I think it's $2 on Kindle. or something like that. It's really inexpensive on Kindle, and it's formatted, it reads really well on Kindle. All right. Now, we mentioned links earlier, links to this recording and to all of our free resources. Cheska, can you drop the link for our link tree into chat? Okay. Linktree, if you're not familiar with it, is a website where you can store all of the links for a person or a company in one place. And here you'll find, there it is, it's in chat now, links to, again, our free educational YouTube video playlist, links to our books, our dictionary, upcoming meetups, our social media. So please follow us on social media, invite your friends to future classes, and you'll find, like I said, links to coming classes. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. And that's it. So thank you all so much. Super appreciate it. And again, grab that link if you're at all interested. If you think something about what we do might make sense for you, just fill out the form and get the data. I just want to thank all of you so much. This is one of the most involved, participatory, intelligent class groups I've had in a long time. You made me really happy that I took my Friday night to do this. So thank you all. I hope to see you at future free classes. And please check out the Tech Academy.